beep was that? Hello! So this is potentially my first video on this channel, or else my first video in a really long time. I had a whole plan to have like 4 or 5 videos edited, filmed, ready to go, and then go onto the new channel. But then I watched the last 2 minutes of this show and I was filled with rage and I knew I needed to make this video. I have a lot of complaints about this show and this season of this show in particular. The biggest one obviously being the romanticization of suicide in the last 2 minutes of this show. I genuinely cannot believe that they ended the show like that. I'm so mad. I knew this show wasn't great. Every season the writing got a little bit worse, but this is just next level bad. Now while the ending of this show was my biggest problem, and I'm going to talk about that, I feel the need to get the other issues off my chest as well, because there were a few of them that got me really mad and a few of them that I just want to talk about. I'm gonna have timestamps for each topic that I talk about either in the description or in the comments, so you can skip to each different section if you want. Before I start this video, I want to say I actually really enjoy this show. I watch every season because I wanted to watch them. This isn't someone coming from the perspective of hating this show and just wanting to bitch about it. It's a person who genuinely enjoyed the show and is really, really, really angry that this is how it ended. So let's go. Number 1. Where is Sabrina Morningstar? I feel like we got a lot of Sabrina Spellman's life and hardly any of Sabrina Morningstar's. In theory, this is okay. The show wanted to be more about Sabrina Spellman than Sabrina Morningstar, even though they're basically the same person. But it ends up feeling like there's bits where you think you might not be able to trust Sabrina Morningstar, and also just feeling generally distant from her character. Like you don't know her that well. It took me longer to care about her than it did to care about Sabrina Spellman. We're introduced to Sabrina Spellman first, and we don't get Sabrina Morningstar on her own until episode 8? 9? No, there's only 8 episodes. Until episode 7. Think about this. Would you have been more upset if it had been Sabrina Spellman going to the other cosmos? It shouldn't upset you more because they're basically the same person, but we don't really get any of Sabrina Morningstar's life in hell. We see one scene where she's dancing with Caliban at a party, and that's about it. Pair this with how much we see of Sabrina Spellman's life in this series. We see her in school running as class president with Roz. She deals with most of the Eldritch Terrors without Sabrina Morningstar's help at all. We see her conflict being sad that she doesn't have a boyfriend and feeling really alone, which we see a little bit of with Sabrina Morningstar, but not as much. Even if they wanted it to just be more about Sabrina Spellman than Sabrina Morningstar, we still did not see enough of Sabrina Morningstar for her to even really be a character. I think that if we just had 10 minutes just for Sabrina Morningstar in an episode before episode 7 to see what her daily life is like in hell, like we get with Sabrina, and maybe introduce some sort of struggle that she's going through, then the audience could get to know her better and it would just be better writing and we'd be more emotionally invested in her character. So when she goes to the other cosmos, we'd be sad for her, not just Sabrina Spellman losing her. My tea is going very cold. Number 2, Caliban and Caliban x Sabrina. Kalina? Sabalaban? He doesn't have a second name. This is kind of coming from the same place as the last point. We don't see any of Sabrina and Caliban's relationship, so there's nothing to make us understand why Sabrina is so in love with Caliban that she marries him. All we see is them dancing together, that's it! Most of the season he spends doing nothing except trying to kill Lilith and her baby because he wants to be on the throne, which then gets confusing because does he actually love Sabrina or does he just want to be king of hell? Him being attractive is not enough for Sabrina to want to marry him. And if it is, then she's a very shallow person and why would we care about her? I feel like this is just the 47-year-old man who's writing this thinking that young girls will just marry whatever hot guy turns up. The thing is, I genuinely thought they could make a cute couple in the last season. But to make a good couple, we would have had to see them develop that relationship. Without that, it just comes out of nowhere and it feels really pushed and unnatural and weird. I understand the show is going to have 2 more seasons and maybe they were going to flesh out their relationship and have a reason for him to get out of the thing so that they could actually spend time together and then get together in later seasons or at the end of the season. But they still could have done something better than just being like, yeah, they're married now. I feel like what would fix both point 1 and 2, if they had a bit where Sabrina Spellman asks Sabrina Morningstar what she's been up to, and then Sabrina Morningstar tells her in a sort of, she's narrating and we see the scenes that are happening that she's talking about. In that, she could have told her about what she's been doing in hell, we could have seen her own life, we could have seen why she freed Caliban in the first place and seen a little bit of their relationship develop, and we could have seen her relationship with Lucifer and Lilith and just her being the queen of hell. Then we could have understood her character more and also understood why she fell in love with the guy who tried to trap her for eternity and wants to turn Earth into the 10th circle of hell. Another thing that would have been good is having a scene somewhere in the show of Sabrina and Caliban existing as a couple. We get those with the other couples, so we should get one with just those 2, and then we could see their relationship dynamic and why they like each other. I feel like the show kind of doesn't know whether we're supposed to like Caliban or not. Like, Sabrina is in love with him. He's the last person she says goodbye to when the 2 Sabrinas are going to become one. When 2 become one. But like, they seem to be really in love, and like when she's in the world with the Aunties, she finds him and she's still in love with him. But that's after she found out that he tried to kill Lilith and her baby. So is she cool with that? Does she want to keep the thrones and knows that that kid might take the throne from her, so she's good with that? It's just very strange, and he jumps right into killing the other Sabrina Spellman, like, and I feel like Sabrina Morningstar would not like that, so are we supposed to not like Caliban or not? Sabrina Morningstar, until the moment she dies, is still in love with him, but then the show wants us to not like him, I think, but I'm not sure. What do they want? What is the narrative? I'm fine with individuals deciding whether they like someone or not, but I think the narrative should know whether, no, this is a fact, the narrative should know whether or not you should like someone or not. It's just how shows work. The show just doesn't know what to think of him, and it's bad writing! Number 3, fucking clay balls. No! Oh, Jesus. I couldn't not mention it. I just couldn't. Why were they so big? That's my question. That's not normal. I don't care if he's made of clay. They shouldn't be that size. And am I supposed to take that seriously? I do want to make an actual point about this. How are we supposed to believe that him being willing to chop off his balls for Sabrina means that he's genuine about loving her? If Sabrina then says he's made of clay, he'll be fine, does that mean that it was never really an issue? Like, if you could just stick him back on, it's not that big a deal that he chopped them off in the first place, right? This is one of those things that really reminds me that this is written by the same guy that writes Riverdale. Number 4, Mambo Marie is a man. Let me get this straight. Zelda and Mambo Marie, 2 women, kiss at the very end of season 3. They then proceed to never kiss again or act in any way romantic towards each other. Although their relationship is mentioned, kind of, like twice, but they don't really have any screen time together in the whole season. And then they reveal that Mambo Marie was a man the whole time. Yay for queer representation, am I right? We finally get some queer woman representation, which is really rare, even rarer than queer man representation. And it ends up being straight. I thought bury your gays was bad. Who knew that straighten your gays was bad? And it's not like having 2 women date and then one of them comes out as trans and they stay together, because that's, you know, a trans person who is an LGBT person, so it's still LGBT representation. But this isn't that. This is just giving us the queer and taking it away. And the fact that, like, they kissed once and never again. None of the straight couples do that. This is really bad. This is the second worst point in the whole thing, to be honest. I'm so mad. Number 5, Lilith's suffering. Lilith suffers too much in this series. She gets such a small amount of time to be happy, and then it's back to suffering in like the same episode. Now, having a character suffer is okay. It's, you know, good to have characters go through things. It leads to character growth. That being said, having a female character suffer constantly through so many different horrific things, and almost always at the hands of men, it feels a bit exploitative. It feels like the writers kind of just wanted to watch a woman suffer and then just gave her her happy ending at the end to pat themselves on the back. It's annoying. It's a trope and it's annoying. Now, yes, when she finally defeats Lucifer, it is satisfying. It's great to see her finally be happy. And I'm glad it ends like that. The problem is that when you think about it, for longer than that moment, she's just lost her baby. She went through so much in this season. So she's pregnant with Lucifer's baby, who she only got pregnant with so he wouldn't kill her. She has this cursed thing put on her by Caliban and his mates, which is supposed to cause her to have a miscarriage that rips her apart and kills her baby. And then she's put in a situation that makes her feel so helpless for her son that she feels the only way to protect her son is to kill him. And then she has all her powers taken away and is cursed by Lucifer to live forever but grow old with no powers. And then she finally becomes queen and gets revenge on Lucifer. She's traumatized. She's gonna have PTSD. She still is haunted by the cries of her dead son. That's gonna mess someone up. At this point, victory comes at too much of a loss to really feel like a victory. It feels a bit like the writers trying to make me believe that they're feminists while also being awful to women. Like, yeah, she's been through all this, but look, now she's the queen of hell, and all these witches pray to Hecate. Number 6, Sabrina Spellman and Nick. I don't like that they got back together this season. If you do, I'm glad you got your ship. I just don't like that they got back together, and I have a reason. I liked their relationship before, and then season 3 happened. She decided to stop caring about boys and stop looking for a boyfriend, and then like 3 episodes later, Nick's like, wanna smooch? And she's like, nah, and then he's like, come on, and she's like, okay, let's fuck. And I was so happy to see her just being like happy and single, and I feel like, you know, having her friends around her and her family could be a great way to not feel so alone rather than having to have a boyfriend. Did we forget why they broke up in the first place? In season 3, Sabrina risked her and her friend's life to save him from hell and separate him from Lucifer, only to have him be a dick to her for no reason and cheat on her with sex demons. And just a few days ago he was dating Prudence, and then all of a sudden he does a freaking 180 and is like, I'm gonna go to your school and I want to date you again. Why? Why does he suddenly want to date her again? It doesn't make sense. There's no explanation. And he never accepts responsibility for cheating on her and being a dick. He never really apologizes. They just get back together, and then she dies, and then he dies. We'll get onto that in a minute. Also, I feel like once they get back together, it's just weird how her life just revolves around him. Like, when the 2 Sabrinas are about to morph, he's the last one she says goodbye to, even though literally a few hours ago they were broken up and not together. Wouldn't she be saying goodbye to her friends and family rather than her boyfriend? Or as well as, why is he the last one? Why is he suddenly the most important person in her life? Why does the show focus so much on boyfriends? Not every teenage girl cares about boyfriends that much. I feel like this show also focuses way too much on her losing her virginity. It's not really that big a deal. And like, she's only 16. Most people have not had sex at 16, I think. It's not that big a deal. Calm your tits, go home, play some video games, be a normal teenager. And listen, boyfriends are fun, boyfriends are nice, until it gets in the way of the actual plot and has bad writing as well. It just comes out of nowhere, and he was a dick to her in the last season, and I feel like it would have made sense if they'd formed more of a friendship first. One more point about this before we move on. When Nick says, we're endgame. Oh god. Hello, yeah, I'd like to report a crime. Can I get the police? Yeah, no, this 47-year-old showrunner thinks that teenagers call themselves endgame, and he keeps writing it in these shows. Yeah, no, I only figured out he put it in Riverdale too, that's where it comes from, so it makes it even worse. Yeah, it's really, okay. You're sending a full squad. Yeah, I would say so. Maybe just send a nuclear bomb. I'd say that would be, but yeah. I think just to be safe, blow it up. The whole him. Blow him up. The writer. Okay, yeah. Okay, thanks. Love you too. Bye. But seriously though, like, who are you? Doctor Strange? This is to the writer and producer, creator, whatever. The only endgame young people are talking about is Avengers. Stop using that word to describe relationships. They also might be talking about chess if they're really nerdy, but like, who cares, they're nerds. I'm kidding, I'm also a nerd. Number 7, original Aunties reveal. I love this episode. This point has nothing to do with the episode. I feel like they should have had the reveal that she was with the original Aunties at the end of the episode rather than right after she walks through the mirror, because I feel like it takes away from the emotion of the scene, suddenly being back in a sitcom. You know, Sabrina Spellman is saying goodbye to Sabrina Morningstar, possibly forever. It's supposed to be an emotional scene, and I feel like we should have had a minute with that emotion rather than going right to bottomless mimosas. Number 8, Sabrina Morningstar's death. She just died, and everyone just accepted that she was dead and did nothing to try to help. Y'all are witches! Y'all have magical powers. None of you thought, maybe let's try save her. Maybe let's give her some CPR. Like, she just jumped through a mirror. She didn't even lose that much blood. What killed her? Sabrina's just like, Nick, she's gone. No, she's gone. She didn't even do anything to stop. Did the showrunners forget they're all witches and have magical powers and have brought people back from the dead before and stopped people from dying before? They could have tried. I feel like it would have been better if they tried, because that happened and I was just like, seriously? That was my reaction. I wasn't like, oh no, I'm so sad. I feel like when Sabrina Spellman died, it felt like they couldn't do anything about it, and it felt really genuinely emotional, right? But Sabrina Morningstar just died. One of the most powerful witches in the entire universe, and she just dies from jumping through a mirror. Fuck's sake. Also, what happened to the Everlasting? Did he die too? Number 9, the Sabrinas being buried in a graveyard that resurrects people. Do I need to say more? That graveyard resurrects people. And it was a whole thing in season 1 when Zelda kills Hilda, and then you're like, what the hell? And then she buries her and you're like, did she just kill her? And then a few minutes later, Hilda just walks back in the door and she's like, seriously, you killed me again? It's a whole thing. And they just forgot. They didn't even give an explanation as to why it couldn't bring them back. It's just a very silly oversight. So silly. Unlike the next point, which is very much not silly, but it's silly. Silly, silly men. Number 10, romanticizing suicide. Most of the things I've talked about so far were just little things that I pointed out to myself when watching the show through and thought, that's not the best. But this is a real issue. This is a real issue. This season ends with Sabrina in the afterlife, and she's reading a book, and someone walks in. She turns around and she sees it's Nick, and she's confused, and he says he swam in the sea of sorrows, and she's like, oh Nick, like, no, you killed yourself. And then they kiss, and that's their happy ending. Take a moment to think about that. He's killed himself and then they smile and they kiss, and it's good and happy. And he did kill himself. This isn't a question. Swimming in a sea of sorrows, whatever it means he died on purpose, and that's killing himself. And like, can you imagine being in Sabrina's position? You've died a very sad, horrible death, and you're in the afterlife, and then you find out that your boyfriend has killed himself because he literally depended on you so much in life that he literally couldn't live without you. That's not romantic. That's needing a therapist. This is a show for teenage girls, and obviously, before I go on, I want to say teenage girls are not dumb or stupid or can't think for themselves. Teenage girls get way too much hate. They literally can't like anything without being made fun of by some 40-year-old man who cares way too much about what teenage girls like. Anyway, now that we have that out of the way, this is a show for teenage girls. And when you are a young person of any gender, you are more impressionable. Because you're young, you haven't seen as many different viewpoints of the world yet. It's just where your brain's at, and that's okay. It's where you should be at. The world should protect young people so they don't see bad things and don't think that those things are okay. So when you're young and you're impressionable, if you get told by a show anything, you're more likely to believe it. Which means if you get told by a show that something is romantic, you're more likely to think that it is romantic. So if you have a show telling you that suicide is romantic, you are more likely to believe that. And you don't want to believe that because it's not romantic. It hurts everyone around you. And unlike in this show, we don't even know if there is an afterlife. We can believe that there's an afterlife, but we can never know for certain. So you could just be stopping existing. Even if there is an afterlife, you have this life to live, and that's important. If you have been tricked into thinking that this is a romantic thing, that is not your fault. The fault goes to the grown-ass man who ended a show by making it out that killing oneself is romantic. It's not. And it's irresponsible to put that in a show. Especially in a show for a young audience, in any show, but especially in a show made for young people. And people who write these shows need to do better, because it's not okay. And the thing is, you might be thinking, well, no young people are thinking that this is romantic. I've looked at Twitter and looked at the comments under the clip of this on YouTube, and I have seen a lot of people arguing that it's bad and saying that it's really bad, but I've also seen a lot of young people thinking that it was really sweet and romantic and a nice ending, and thinking that just because it's sad doesn't mean it's a bad ending, and that is dangerous. It's not okay. It's just not okay. So, do better, please. Please do better. Media affects the way people think in the real world. Spreading ideas through media spreads those ideas in reality. This is an extremely intense thing to talk about, and I'm pretty emotionally drained from thinking about it for days on end while I'm writing this video. I'm going to talk about ways I think it could have ended that would have been better. So number one, Nick is old. I feel like it would have been a lot less romanticizing suicide if it ended and Nick was like a few hundred years old and he'd died of natural causes, and, you know, Sabrina's all like, oh my god, Nick, how long has it been? And he's like, 900 years. And she's like, you look good for your age, because he still looks young, because, you know, you gotta have everyone looking hot and young. And then he's like, oh, you look as beautiful as the day I met you. And then they smooch, and then it's happy, and it's not as problematic, and everything's fine. Number two, Sabrinas aren't dead. What if we had the family at the funeral, and everything was really sad, and we have the sad ending, and we have all the things wrapping up, and then in an after credits scene, or just at the end, we have it focusing on the graves, and then right at the end we have both of their hands burst through the soil, and then the credits roll with some rock song playing over it. That would have been great, and it could be sequel hinty, but it just means that they're going to continue living, and you can create fan theories. People would be talking about it in a positive way. It would be like, oh, what was going to happen after that? Or you could have everyone's having a dinner together, like after the funeral, and they're all talking about the Sabrinas, blah blah blah, and then the door slowly creaks open, and you're like, oh, who's this gonna be? And then it's the two Sabrinas walk in covered in mud after crawling out of their graves. And then the rock song plays, because you gotta have a rock song play randomly at the end of a TV show. It's just cool. Number 3. If they really, really had to kill the Sabrinas, what if they had the two Sabrinas in the afterlife together? And that's what we see in the last scene, is them just hanging out together and talking and having a dance party. I feel like this makes sense thematically based on what we've seen in the show. They had the whole secret best friends forever thing going on, and forever, the afterlife's forever, so they're secret best friends in the afterlife. I think that would be genuinely happy, because you're seeing them happy. There's always going to be problematic things with having an afterlife in a show, but that seems genuinely like nicer. My cat's meowing at me. I think that's enough for this video right now. At some point I might do a full review of the whole show, but that will involve rewatching the whole show, and I'm watching other things right now, but I might. So if you want to see that, comment and let me know. In conclusion, I generally like this show. I don't take it too seriously, but I think there's a lot of good in it. It's just unfortunate that there's so much bad writing and that this is how they decided to end the show. As a person who is genuinely a fan of the show, I'm really angry at it, to be honest. Suicide should never be romanticized, surprisingly. I guess that's what happens when you're a 47-year-old man and you try to write a TV show about a 16-year-old woman who's also a witch. Your lives are just so separate. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos about TV and film, please do subscribe. I have a lot of things planned out that I'm really excited for. I'll put some bloopers at the end of this maybe. Until next time, be nice to cats. Oh fuck. Ooh, I'm scared. Let's get my glasses off so I can't read my script. No! Fuck off. Don't sniff the candle. Oh, you've knocked over my recycling bin! What is their ship name? Do they have... Don't kiss my boob! Inappropriate! Your child. Mambo Bari back. Becomes queen and gets revenge because I did ship them before. Well, I don't really ship. Okay, that's a lie. 9. It smells so good. Holy cow. Yankee Candle, you're doing the Lord's work. You're doing the Dark Lord's work. You gotta stick with the theme, you know? Closing down my computer. Ow! Pinching my hand with it. Do I look like a twit?